met through church community, faith. Marcus moved into town, got a job with the label, and a mutual friend connected us based on our shared love of ball. And this is like 8 or 9 years ago. And so from day one, yeah, it's that type of thing, right? There's certain people that you meet for the first time, and then after that first time kind of fades into obscurity, and it just feels like somebody that you've known your whole life. And so I feel like there's just so many different overlaps when it comes to our life, right? There's not this segmented or compartmentalized relationship. It's, faith and family, like, so our whole lives kind of overlap in very rich ways. I live my life by the mindset and the mantra that the team you play with is more important than the field that you play on, right? So if you got the right people on your team, it doesn't matter where you go. If you don't got the right people on your team, it doesn't matter where you go, right? And so I think that was the thing that maybe was the that was the thing that was like the secret fertilizer in the soil that was Portrait, right? There's a lot of people that have good ideas and are good seeds, but those good seeds are thrown in bad soil and they don't ever bloom, right? Portrait was, I thought it was a good idea, right? We thought it was special. There was this burden that we had for coffee, and we can talk more about that. And I remember having the idea. Aaron was in the mix too. Y'all gonna talk to him some. And he had the way to implement it. And our mindset was, this is dope. And we're both people that are just content with things that are small, unimpressive, working in obscurity in our little corner of the world. And Marcus comes through and he says, no, wait, that? Bro, no. Slave narratives, the martyr, the drug. He's like, no, that is something special. And we said, maybe it could be, right? And so it was this part of it where I feel like if Marcus wasn't a part of the team, Portrait would be a great idea that nobody ever heard of.
There's two things that really come to mind for me that are really at my core. And one of them is just moving at the speed of trust. And secondly, critical connection over critical mass. And so those are just two filters and two lenses through which I see everything. And so when I got the call from John and Aaron to join the team, it was an instant yes, because I felt like over the course of my relationship with John and over the course of my relationship with Aaron, and I'd have to say really quickly, Aaron was someone also that I consider a brother, and we had built a similar relationship to the one that I built with John. And so when all of those things came together, I was like, these are people that I trust, these are people I feel connected to, and in that capacity, whatever mental faculty or creative faculties I have, like those are the two things that just will either shut it down for me if I feel like there's not connection or if I feel like there's not trust. But on the other hand, if those two things are there, then it opens it up, and I don't even have to think. Everything just kind of flows out automatically, and that's the space that I've always tried to work within. And so, much like John said with these guys, when I got that call to join the team, team is something that's always important to me. Growing up, I always tried to work on my game, but I was a little smaller. I was always the guy that would show out in tryouts, but I would get cut, And so just with the trust and with the connection and the opportunity to be a part of a team and to be a part of something bigger than myself, it was an automatic yes for me.
It's 2022 now. I didn't drink coffee until I was 27 years old, so it's been about 11 years. It just wasn't something that was appealing to me But life got so crazy for me around 2011 with, work and life and all this type of stuff, that there was a stretch of time where like my Tuesday to Wednesdays were impossible. So my Tuesday nights, we would be premarital counseling folks at our crib until like midnight. And then I have to get up at 4 a.m. to teach a 5:30 a.m. class. And so got to a point where I told my wife, it's like, yo, Sean, I need you to make me some coffee. I need you to make me something. And all we had at the crib was my parents. They left some Folgers instant crystals. Fam, Chandra put in sugar, right? Tons of it. And I drank it and it's like, yo, this is bad. This is still bad, but not as bad as I remember. And then I started to get into it, right? I like to say like, most people when it comes to like, if their interest is a light switch, right? They find a thing that they like. Most people have a dimmer switch where they can explore it and kind of slowly turn up. I don't have that. So for me, it's either all the way off or it's floodlights, it's on. So then I dive headfirst into this coffee world. And so at this time, 10 years ago, I'm traveling around the US getting a chance to speak. And so whenever I would touch down, Twitter got really big at this time. So I would just tweet, yo, where are the best coffee shops? So in like Memphis, Chicago, Philly, New York, Portland, Pittsburgh, Seattle, LA, all of that. And every time I would walk into the front of the door of that shop, I wouldn't see people that look like y'all or the crew here. I would not see people that looked like us, dressed like I'd look down at the shoes and the pants, and I would boots, the white dudes, with the flannel, a little bit of cleavage showing, right? The pants rolled up, axes, right? And it's like, yo, it ain't even no trees. Why y'all out here swinging axes?
Bunny bear.
This is what I'm saying. And I left out and I felt like, dang, like coffee is something that I started to enjoy, but it felt like every school that I went to, like, man, I'm the only black kid in my class. So I figured, yo, maybe this is like golf. Maybe this is just like a white man's thing. And like maybe I could be the Tiger Woods of this thing. And then back at this time, we didn't have that interconnected network of black folks that we do now. So I started to read books. And then as I read books, I found out, oh, wait a minute, 1,200 years ago, an Ethiopian goat herder stumbles across this bean. It's like, wait, well, yeah. So you mean to tell me coffee comes from Ethiopia? And then I started to learn like, oh, no, coffee mainly grows along the equator. So coffee literally grows where black and brown folks grow. And at that point, it was like, I'd take a look at this cup and I would sit back and say, yo, it's crazy that the faces of the founders have been forgotten, even though the pigment that's in this drink reflects their own. And that was when coffee changed for me from a hobby to a burden. And so I'm like, yo, we gotta do something about this. And so sat on that for a few years. My wife and I were in Spain in 2018. And what we did in our time was went to coffee shops in Spain. And it was crazy because every coffee shop in Spain was just like the ones that we left in. I'm like, yo, this is a problem. And so at this point, it's like, all right, we got to start a shop. My wife and I was on board, and she's like, all right, what's the next step? And I'm like, I'm a YouTube scholar when it comes to coffee, so I really don't know, no. So what I'm gonna have to do is, if we're really gonna start this thing, I'm gonna have to quit my job, start as a barista from the bottom and work my way up. The problem was I had a family, I had a mortgage. And so I said, all right, Chandra, we can't take that path because I like to eat and live in the house. So then it stepped into, and this is what I feel like my superpower is like building a team. So I know how to ideate and I know how to galvanize. And so I spent the next few years just with everybody that I met, saying, no, listen though, black people and coffee, no, listen, and telling this story. I think what made coffee a burden and something that we feel like could change things was when I first moved to Atlanta in 2009. I parked my car, my little Ford Explorer Sport, and I would ride MARTA, our train system. MARTA would go north to south, east to west. And it's this crazy little like sociological experiment. So you get on the southmost train stop, airport station. And when you board that train is black. Blackety black. It's Wakanda, right, at the bottom. But then as you ride the train north, a 25-minute train ride to the north stop, there's two things that take place. The inside of the train changes and the outside of the train changes. So with each stop that you go up north, more and more black and brown folks get off the train and more white folks get on. So it goes from Wakanda in the south to Switzerland in the north, right? But the outside of the train changes too. With each stop that you go up north, the economic conditions don't just improve, they skyrocket. So literally, you have this parable of black and brown people getting off the train before they can take advantage of the economic opportunities that surround them in a city that they built. Aaron, because of the work that he did in coffee, started to talk to me about the coffee supply chain. And that's when I saw, oh, wait a minute. If you take the coffee supply chain and put it on top of that MARTA train stop, the exact same thing takes place. Coffee grows where black and brown folks grow, literally along the equator. And then with each stop that you go up north through processing, exporting, importing, roasting, retailing, economic conditions improve, and the racial dynamics of the people that get to take a bite out of that pie completely flip-flops. And that was when we said, all right, something's got to be done. Something has to be done now, and something has to be done here. That if we could take that and plant that coffee seed as an industry in the opportunity desert that is the West End, we think that we could do something special and change things. And so that was what turned it from, a hobby into a burden.
Yeah, I can speak to it a bit. It's actually a pretty fun process behind it. So there was, again, Aaron and John really lived this coffee lifestyle. And for me, I'm looking at a lot of what was said, and we sat down and we did a branding exercise, and the name, there were some options, and the name kind of popped up out of there, and we sent it around. It was a little bit of a voting process, and then they went away and came back with this pouring a new narrative tagline to go with the name, Portrait. And underneath that was this saying that we want to reimagine the picture that comes to mind when people think about specialty coffee. So we had people with passion and who could articulate that passion, and we had a little bit of a system, a filter that we could push that through. And from there, it stuck, it resonated, it was designed to do that, so that even as we went around talking about it, if you pull one member of the Portrait team, it's kind of that one band, one song, one sound mentality. Like, hey, we don't need this to turn into a game of telephone. We need it to, everybody needs to be able to get it. And through everybody kind of honoring that mindset and picking up that burden, if you will, for clarity and for passion, it just kind of comes out in everything that we do. So there's some campaign design that happens when we're starting things out. We kind of push everything through the same process, but then at the same time, it's in the people. It's tight in the sense that when it comes time to talk about it, we have the words in place, we have our visuals, we have the MARTA metaphor and things like that, but it's loose, it's baggy enough for everyone to fit into it in their own unique way. So whether it's photography, Erin Fender, the wife of Aaron Fender, of Aaron, she does photography, but it's baggy enough for her as a photographer to fit into and articulate and express it through the photos that she puts out. You mentioned a little bit the packaging. There was a very intentional thought process that went into our current packaging, which was, okay, again, I'm a music guy, and this is an opportunity where I felt, okay, well, what's the metaphor that resonates for me, you know? And I say, well, I think about Motown. And I said, well, Motown was very special in music because they took the black sound and they made it accessible. A lot of times when you think about musicians that there's that whole crossover thing, right? Where you have to sort of sing the white song, you have to do the white thing, but Motown was really able to bottle black soul and give it to the world and make people really appreciate it. And so when it came time for us to really crystallize our visual, crystallize our packaging, immediately that resonated with me. I shared it with the team. Everyone said, yes, that's it. And down to the way that our lettering feels, is the packaging is designed to feel like vinyl. That it's bold, it's clear, but it also has that soul. You know, in order to sell 1 million records, you gotta have that brand recognition, you gotta have that brand recall, that if someone goes to their mom and pop record store, they know that's the artist, that's the album. Or if they go to Walmart and they say, hey, that's the artist, that's the album. And based on everything that we built, we felt like we had that trajectory to be able to exist in a mom and pop or a West End grocery store, which we do here now. But then also we felt like we had the product, we had the team, we had the vision to also exist at Target, at Kroger, things like that. And so I say again, it's just things being tight enough to be clear, but being baggy enough for it to feel like it's something that we could all live with.
And so a practical way that we did that is like on our first bags, and I see one that you got right there. So the very first bags that we had, you look at that font, and the font is very thin, long, and it gives off this sense of elegance, right? Which was dope. However, coffee had already been something that we felt like had been, it had an air of like pretense to it, right? It felt very pretentious and elitist. And you go into a shop, and if you don't know nothing and you ask a question, certain people would look down on you like you were dumb, right? And so that keeps people away. And we felt like we do have a dope product that is elegant in the truest sense of the word, but we don't want our packaging to communicate first elegance. We want it to communicate accessibility, right? Yeah, coffee is something that, it grows from the ground in some of the places in the world that for a myriad of reasons are poorer and disenfranchised. And it's like, no, this is a gift that exists in the world that's meant to be accessible to all of us. And so I mean, it was those types of things. All right, even the letters on the package, we want that to communicate our heartbeat for accessibility.
Yeah, and it's a really important thing to really park here and communicate that. One of the other hobbies I have is cutting hair. And so for me, when I look at someone and they don't have a haircut, I'm like, man, I see the beauty underneath all that wildness. So if I just had the chance to grab the clippers and remove the things that are, and really bring out that beauty, bring out that natural aspect of who you are, it's one of the things that drives me crazy, and I love being able to do that. And I've always had this sort of this inside-outside relationship with coffee where I'm in it now because of the business, but I also maintain a little bit of an outsider perspective because it gives me that same perspective to say, okay, I'm looking at it, what's distracting? What's actually gonna bring to the forefront what's most important? And I say that because one of the things that we wanted to achieve was, when you think about tissue, right? Most people don't say, hey, you got a tissue. A lot of times they say, hey, you got a Kleenex. And we wanted to, through accessibility and reaching people who haven't been targeted or haven't been included in the coffee conversation, we wanted to be their first introduction. A lot of times accessibility or broadness, especially something when it comes to specialty coffee it's like it's not as good because it's so accessible. It's like a hit record. Oh, you're not that great of an artist because your song is so catchy, whatever. But we wanted to be able to give people that entryway where when they start to deal with coffee, they don't go and say, hey, I want some coffee. They're like, yo, y'all got portrait? Y'all got portrait up in there? And that's coming from a place of we want to have that. We want to remove every bit of barrier. We want to remove every bit of what we felt coming into coffee, going into. We don't want you to feel like that. We want you to feel like you're welcome. We want you to feel like what you see is what you get, and it's something that you can trust over and over again. So it's just something that we get really excited about and very, very passionate about when talking about it. So. Yeah. Berry in specific is still one of our staple coffees, one of our year-round coffees. And the interesting thing about this was our brand was set up in such a way where it could be tight enough to be clear, but baggy enough to include the actual people behind the company. And so Aaron is a big fan of Barry Jenkins, and he put me on to Barry Jenkins. He really liked Moonlight, and so I watched that movie, all those things. And so one of the first things he wanted to do was dedicate a coffee to Barry Jenkins, and we did that. We named it so, and we treated it like a single rollout, so we didn't just throw it up on the website. We teased out some content. We took some relevant information from Barry's story and from Barry's work, and we shared it with our audience and pointed it back to the coffee. And one of the unique things about this is it actually reached him. So Barry Jenkins actually got the Barry coffee.
Yeah, he's a coffee head too,
which
we didn't know.
Yeah, he's very serious about his coffee. So he got the coffee, made it to his exact specifications for how he likes his coffee, posted it online, and for our 1-year birthday, he actually sent Aaron a video message congratulating him, congratulating the team, and all of that. So one of the very special things about this coffee is, again, it was really born from that place of individual expression and individual interest, shared with the group and brought out in such a way where we could even, for our audience, say, if you don't know about Barry Jenkins, you should, and as you dig down into that, you'll understand us a little bit more as well.
Yeah, so that's the goal, right? That we say it all the time, coffee is not just a product. Coffee is this platform to be able to do good. And one of the good things that we want to do is change the picture that comes into people's minds when they think of coffee and film and literature. So the other year-round coffee that we have is based off of Toni Morrison, right? And when we got down to write the flavor notes, right? Most times folks will write things like, strawberry, banana, or the fruit. With Toni on the bag, the notes are savory, smooth, and unapologetically chocolate. And that's what we love about Toni Morrison, right? That she was writing these stories, these American stories about Black people. And an interviewer sat across from her one time in a room like this and was like, yo, Toni, your stuff is dope and it's great. When are you gonna write about white people in the same way that you write about Black people? Like, when are you gonna graduate and write American stories? And she's like, I'm writing American stories about Black people. And her thing was, I want people to close their eyes, and when they think about American stories, I want them to think about Black people. And so we named, coffee after her, and have used it to expose a bunch of people to her work that never would have known her, right? And it just gives people a different paradigm, right? So even like Michael Eric Dyson, he wrote a book about Jay-Z a few years ago, and the paradigm that he's gonna use is, people talk a whole lot about the American dream, somebody that could pull themselves up from the mud. And his book is like, actually, a guy like Jay-Z is probably one of the purest expressions of that dream realized, right? And so we view coffee as like, nah, we're not just trying to sell bags. We're trying to use this as a platform to advance and spread those ideas into the world so that the generation that comes up behind us can look through what we've done and see things that they thought were impossible, right? That those barriers that they thought were impossible, that through the work that we've done, we kind of turned the opacity of it down, and now those roadblocks feel a little more transparent and people can go through them.
And this is something that you'll see over and over again in the things that we do, the things that we put out. It really operates from this understanding. I had a friend one time who's also in branding and marketing. We had a conversation and we talked about how a lot of brands are after cultural relevance, right? And that's it's so broad. That's why you see so many people wasting money and taking these wide swings that don't connect. But one of the things we really gelled around, and one of the things that folks will continuously get the opportunity to see, is we're not after cultural relevance. We're after community relevance. If you've seen the movie, if you engage with Barry Jenkins' work, whether you're primarily a black person, because down to the way that he lighted his films, down to the stories that he told about manhood, those are things that you look and say, wow, okay, I got that. That did something for me. This is what y'all are on. And if you're not black, then yet again, you get the opportunity to come deeper into that funnel. And one of the other things, and you'll see it in some of the other things that we set out to do, is we're not actually trying to bring coffee to the culture. That's we get hit up with a lot of people who want to work with us, and again, totally understandable that that's the mindset that they have, either trying to be relevant or bring their product to the culture. But we're actually taking the opposite approach. We're bringing our culture into coffee. We're saying, nah, we already exist. We've been here. The industry just chose to ignore us. Yeah. So we're coming in as ourselves. We're doing our thing, and that's just what it is.
My name is Aaron Fender. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Portrait Coffee. I went to Kennesaw State University and I worked at a local coffee shop starting back in 2012. And so I was a barista, then a shop manager, then I helped with some training and education with the company. I just got to experience every part of that supply chain as we get closer to being a roaster. And so it was in that training and education time where I was able to take an origin trip and really see how coffee's grown and processed. And that trip was really important for me to understand how coffee's produced and potentially what role I could play in the supply chain. I was really, really excited to visit Origin. We have this entire lexicon for how we talk about coffee. I'm saying we as industry folk, but it was awesome to have all of that stripped away and just meet the actual farmers, meet the producers, go to the milling factories, go to the washing stations, and just talk with the different folks who are part of the supply chain. There's just so much I didn't know, and actually just touching trees, fruit, all that stuff was really impactful, because it went from just being a text on a label to an actual person. I also had a lot of dissonance on the trip as well in seeing black and brown folks who are these incredible craftsmen and women. And at the time, I felt that dissonance in which I was like, I wonder if consumers actually understand that these are black and brown folks doing this. And not only are they doing this now, but they've been doing it for centuries. So it was really, really overwhelming experience. We have an incredible team. So Khalid Smith, who's one of our founding members, he's our operations manager, and he does an incredible job of, doing a little bit of everything. Managing wholesale, managing e-commerce, managing our team down here in the roastery. My specific role is really, I end up being more of a director of coffee at this point, where I'm evaluating a lot of our green coffee samples, helping profile a lot of our coffees. What that means is I take the first stab at trying to figure out how to roast the coffee. In doing that, I typically look at the origin of the coffee, the density of the coffee, and previous history with similar coffees. So we're about to go into our third year of roasting Kenyan coffees. So I have a lot of data to say, typically this batch size, this style of roasting played pretty well with the roaster. And so taking that and the density and the age of the coffee, you know, I'll typically use that to profile a coffee. And then DJ is our lead roaster. He does what we call a lot of our production roasting. So a lot of the heavy lifting of what it takes to, you know, consistently get folks their coffee each and every day. And thankfully we're adding some more team members soon.
Hi, my name is Kayla Scott, and I am a roaster and production associate at Portrait Coffee. I've been working here for almost 4 months now. I was already heavily affiliated in the coffee community here in Atlanta, and I heard about Portrait, but I didn't know a lot about them yet. But when this position opened up, it really connected with my vision for my career in coffee and their passion for advancing Black people in particular in the industry, where sometimes we can be very marginalized and kind of overlooked for certain opportunities. So it provided another pathway for my career to further and also compensate. Sometimes being a barista is it's hard work physically, and the pay is not always as fair and livable as you would want it to be for the amount of effort and time you spend building the coffee community in those particular cafes. And Portrait really has a passion for mentorship, giving us skills, accessibility, and most of all, just enriching our lives, being able to live well. And so I've really enjoyed it. The people here are great, and the community is even more amazing than I ever would have expected. People see me at other shops on my days off, and they're like, "Oh, you work for Portrait?" And I'm just so like, "Whoa, yeah, I do." So I really love it here. It's been really fun, and yeah.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Portrait. And typically what I do every day is respond to all our customers. I'm kind of like the main point of contact. And I also speak to all of our partners and collaborators. It's just been such an amazing opportunity to spend time with this team. So really happy to be here.
Yeah, in some ways, since that time, like I said, that was in 2017, I took a break from specialty coffee for a season. I was able to work at a couple different startups and gain skills in operations and hospitality, but there was something about coffee that always kept itching me back, and a large part of that was education. I really wanted to see more folks look like myself a part of the entirety of the coffee supply chain, and so I've always had a burden and passion for education and empowerment. I think as I continue to grow, I think specifically I'm interested in the economic empowerment of Black people, and so coffee education is a vehicle for that. So it's been really fun to be able to work with team members and teach them how to roast, or teach them how to cup, or teach them about different coffee varietals.
Well, thank you all for coming. Welcome to Portrait Coffee. This is our second cupping we've ever done. So give us grace. We're still figuring out like what's the best way to go about doing this. We're just gonna make this more of a conversation. And we have 4 coffees on the table today. I'm gonna give a really high level overview of what cupping is, what's the point of it, why do we do it. Everything's an average of 8. You multiply it by 2, and then that's how that's the score. Yeah. So the minimum grade for specialty grade coffee is an 80, and most coffees are scored between an 80 and a 90.
Is this like SCA stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, so everybody kind of rips off of it a little bit, but this is literally I could take this feedback and say, yo, Chelsea, I cup this at an 84.5, but you're pricing this at like an 86 coffee, and it's not. So and that's where not necessarily negotiate price, but probably more importantly, just give real feedback. Before we get to actually tasting, what we're gonna do is break the crust. So if you are feeling courageous enough, you can come grab a spoon, and I'll demonstrate, but we're gonna take the spoon and we're gently going to put our face and the spoon right into the cup, and we're gonna do a big ol' waft, and you're gonna have this overwhelming opportunity to smell what's going on in the cup.
You know, some people as tasters, they see colors. When I first heard that, I was like, what? But when I think about what is like a really good, specific, fruit-forward coffee that we can offer customers year-round, it made me think of Moonlight, like those big blues and purple hues. And there's something about the film that's so approachable, specific, and pulsating. Like it kind of draws you in. Like the whenever you see those purples and blues, you kind of like lean in a little bit. And it's just so progressive and kind of. I wanted to see that translate in a cup of coffee, and so that's kind of the inspiration with the bean. And it's so interesting how these different sensations factor in when we're tasting. You know, because your taste is connected to your vision. So it's funny. Sometimes I'm still fleshing it out. I've had to do so much unlearning in order to develop my palate. If you open a coffee textbook, it'll tell you, in East Africa you will get. I mean, it's true. You'll typically get really fruity, acidic, sweet coffees. You go to Central South America, they'll be tamed down a little bit. You'll get more of that like big, round, nutty, creamy caramel bodied coffees. But that part of unlearning that I was saying was there's so much specificity in how these producers are developing coffees that the game has totally changed. So some of the wildest, most delicious fruit-forward coffees I've tasted are from Peru. Peru has now become one of my favorite coffee-producing countries. Or you can go to Ethiopia. I tried this Ethiopian longberry coffee, which is like honestly one of the most strange coffees I've ever cupped. So it's in one part being open-minded in cupping, and two, just tasting a ton. You just have, and thankfully I've been able to try a bunch of different stuff. But to answer some of my favorites, definitely the last 2 years, it's been Peru, Ethiopia, Kenya, and lately we've been doing a lot of work in Colombia as well. And I've been really, really blown away with the consistency and quality of stuff out of Colombia.
We're really honored to be named Best Roaster in Georgia by Food and Wine. It was a shock, and we all just celebrated. It's really cool in building a team of roasters to celebrate that together. It was really just quite an honor to see all the work that DJ and Kay put in every day recognized. So.